Fine. So here, the Rebbe's whole approach with the idea of fast days and the idea of Tisha B'av specifically is, in a way, it turns like the whole Jewish world on its head. Because in the Jewish world, and even I would say to a certain degree, before the Rebbe really pushed this home, the whole preoccupation with Tisha B'av and the 3 weeks, and Shavuos B'Tammuz and the 9 days was the halachas and the idea of avelus. Avelus, mourning, sadness, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and we have to cry over the Beis Hamikdash. And like there was a sign, I think I mentioned this last week in Los Angeles a few years ago, who will cry if we don't cry? That was the focus. But in truth, there is something called not seeing the forest for the trees. You're so busy looking at the trees, you don't get the big picture. The Rebbe's whole approach was teaching us, what are we crying about? We are crying because we miss it, but that's not the end of it. We are miss it, and we want it to be rebuilt. When a child cries over something that they lost, they want to have that thing back. By us, the Rebbe says, it's in our hands, and the purpose of the crying, and the purpose of the fast days, and the purpose of the 9 days and the 3 weeks is all about doing all types of things to bring it back. That the reason why the Rebbe introduced so many, if you will, relatively new things about the 3 weeks and the 9 days. For example, pushing the idea of adding in Limud HaTorah, pushing the idea of adding in tzedakah during the 3 weeks and the 9 days, pushing the idea of learning Hilchos Beis Hamikdash and learning about the Beis Hamikdash, pushing the idea of making siyumim during the 9 days.
But that's the Rebbe specifically.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The reason why the Rebbe was doing that was, obviously, it's a good thing to do, but it brings home and is directing our energy towards the future. We're learning more Torah, we're doing more mitzvahs, we're learning about the Beis Hamikdash to be able to have the Beis Hamikdash. We're not just so busy crying about the past that we're not thinking about what we're trying to accomplish with it. And this message is also the idea of Shabbos Chazon in general, or the Shabbosim and the 3 weeks in general, and especially the Rebbe is going to say when Tisha B'av comes out on Shabbos, like the Kviyas this year, and when the Sikha was said originally was in Tafshin Memches and was published in Tafshin Nun Aleph. In both those years, Tisha B'av was the same Kviyas like this year. Tisha B'av came out on Shabbos. Oh, so that's the whole Nakuda that Rebbe always says. It's going to be Yahafchu Yamim Elu L'Sasin L'Simcha, that they're not just not going to be Tisha B'av. Adrabah, the whole positive aspect of Tisha B'av is going to come revealed. And when we have a Tisha B'av that comes down on Shabbos, so we have only the positive without all the negative, without all the avails. Let's see it inside. The Bir Apnimi Shal Shem Shabbos Chazon Shabbat Pashtus Wal Shem Aftoira. Then Aftoira begins with the words Chazon Yeshayo. But what's the inner explanation? That's what he's saying. Hapnimi. Yadua Mashahevi Rav Chosla Noid Rab Hilme Parij. B'Shem Harav Barditchev Nishmasa begins in Meroimim. The Shabbos Chazon Humaloshin Machze. Shemarin L'chol Echad Ve'echad MiYisrael HaMikdash T'La'asid Merachik. Kaman Sif Beis over there is going to go into more details about this. What does it mean they're showing him, and what's the idea from afar, and so on. Yeshloima, the Rebbe adds to this idea. This is true by every Shabbos Chazon. We're only holding the second paragraph. This is true by every Shabbos Chazon. But Kasher Shabbos Chazon Chal B'Yom HaTisha B'av Ba'atzmai Ki B'Kviyas Shana Zu. Like we said before, this was a Sikha said in Tafshin Memches and then printed in Tafshin Nun Aleph. Harei Inyan Zeh the Shabbos Chazon Riyas Beis Hamikdash Tel La'asid Hu B'Yeser Seis V'Yeser Oz. Dehini Yaduam Shemataris Inyat Saimus ובמילא כוונוסם הפנימיס גם עתה היא שיהפכו לימים טובים. That's the goal. The purpose is that they should become yomim tovim. B'loshon Rambam shemasidim liyas yomim tovim v'meisasim v'simcha. That's what we're aiming for. We're trying to make Tisha B'av. We're trying to make the 3 weeks. We're trying to make Shivasa B'tamas into days of yomim tovim. V'inyan zehu bad gosh yisera b'tainis the Tisha B'av. More than all the Tanaisim that the Rambam mentions. Why? Because we see something about Tisha B'av that we don't see by any other tongues. Comes Shivas B'tamas, for example, or any other tongues, but Asar B'tei, and Shem Gedalia. We have Slichas, we have Tachnun, we have all these different things. Tisha B'av, no Tachnun, no Slichas, nothing. They know Tachnun, V'loi Slichas B'Tisha B'av, V'ei Neifel Ha'pneim, Mipshum the Ikre Moyed. In other words, the Kavanah Pnimis of what Tisha B'av is about is already there, even affecting the halacha of Tisha B'av now. Tisha B'av Yalid Malka Mashiach. Ubefrat al Pia Yidua. Shebiyoim Huladatoy Shal Adam Mazoli Goyver. The Lefiza Nimtza Shebiyoim Tisha B'av Misgaber Mazoli Shal Mashiach Tzidkenu. And what's Mashiach about? What's the mazel of Mashiach? Mashiach is about Geula. So therefore, if the mazel of Mashiach is his gabrus, so therefore, because that's what Mashiach is about. The Rebbe, whenever he can connect something to halacha, he wants to connect it, because halacha is down to earth. Halacha is practical. It's not just pie in the sky, spheres, whatever. Down here, that we have a halacha that expresses it, that shows it in the most strongest way, that it's practical in our world. What's the halacha? We say nachem in the bracha Boini Yerushalayim by mincha by Tisha B'av. Why do we say it then? Nachem, comfort. Comfort doesn't belong on Tisha B'av. Tisha B'av, we're busy mourning. Why say Nachem? Ki oz b'minchas Tisha B'av. Yerushalmi talks about Tisha B'av in general. The Arizal says specifically mincha time Tisha B'av. Noilud HaMashiach HaNikra Menachem. So again, we say Nachem. He was born. We say Psukim of Nacham at the time of Tisha B'av that he was born. Yeshloiman, the Rebbe adds something which seems to be a chiddush of the Rebbe, because the fact that it's called a moyed is a pasuk that we have in Tanakh, that Tisha B'av is called moyed. But what's the logic? Because it says it's called moyed, and therefore we don't have tachnun, we don't do slichas. But what's the logic to call Tisha B'av a moyed? Based on this, it's understood why it's called a moyed, the Rebbe says. Because if Mashiach was born on Tisha B'av, then for sure it's a Yom Tov. Mazoli Goyver, it's Yeshua Vatzal. Valpizi Yesh Loimar. This is all a regular year. Valpizi Yesh Loimar, the Ksharat Soim, the Tisha B'av Chal B'yom Shabbos Kodesh, Shadoichin as Atainis L'Yom Rishon, Ein Ze Ela B'Shayches L'Inyan Hatsoim V'Dinoi Inui V'Avelus. What are we pushing off? Not the inner idea of Tisha B'av, not the Inyan Pnimi of Tisha B'av. That's not being pushed away. The side things, those things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, fasting and other things, that we push off for later. Aval Inyan HaMoed Shabai, Beglal Ze Shabi Yom Ze Noel Mashin Shal Yisrael, V'Yom Mesugal L'Nachama Geula, Einoi Nidcha the Shabbos Kodesh. And not just it's not Nidcha, but in a year when Tisha B'av comes out on Shabbos, it's even stronger. Va'adrabe in Yonim Elohim be'ikir b'yom Shabbos Kodesh, more so than if Tisha B'av would come out in the middle of the week. V'al derech mashin is bor b'mokum macher b'negeh l'chol hatzoyim is shekishachal b'yom HaShabbos Kodesh nidcha rak inyan hatzoyim. Again, just the negative part of the fast. Aval zeh sheyom tzoyim nikra yom ratzon l'Hashem, like the pasuk says, einoi nidcha miyom HaShabbos Kodesh. And actually, the fact that the fast day is a Yom Ratzim fits in very well with Shabbos. Va'adraba hareu eis Ratzim b'yeser seis v'yeser oz ki chemdas yamim oitze karatza. What's chemda? Chemda is also Ratzim. So it's a day of Hashem's Ratzim being revealed. Now you have double Ratzim. You have it's a Yom Ratzon because it's a day on the calendar of a Tainus, even though we don't actually fast, and it's Shabbos, so it's double Ratzon of the Eibishter. When it's Tavino Lange ba'ineg chile v'shtiachulu. V'nimtza sh'k'shatzayim chal b'yom Shabbos Kodesh hareu k'ma yomte v'yom sasim v'simcha. The Rebbe brings down in the footnote that Adrabah, when it comes out in such a kvias, I think we might have learned this last week or 2 weeks ago, when it comes out in such a kvias, we have to be extra careful, we have to actually add in our Sudas Shabbos. Because you shouldn't chas v'sholem think that I'm doing some type of mourning in some way, and I'm eating less this Shabbos, or I'm eating something not as good as Shabbos. You shouldn't chas v'sholem have an idea of mourning on Shabbos. The kivin shekashachal Tisha B'av Shabbos Kodesh mudgish ba'ifin goli in yoni hapnimi shu moyed v'yoyim mesugal in yoni Yeshua v'gula nechamam harigam re'iyas Beis Hamikdash la'asid b'yoyim zeh, which we started off at the beginning of the Sikha, liyoyse Shabbos Chazon he b'yeser seisu b'yeser os. So now he's going to get into the topic of seeing the Beis Hamikdash. ויש לוואי רעילה המיוחד הראיס המקדש דלעשות כשחל שבס חזון ביום התשע באב עצמי. בהקדם אביר בהמשך דיבר הרב לוי יצחק ברדיצ'ב שמביא שם משל מלוואי זה שמארנס המקדש דלעשות לכל אחד ואחד מרוחק וזה לא שייני. Now he's going to go through a whole mashal, the well-known mashal about what does it mean that they show the Beis Hamikdash. What's the purpose? What's the idea? What do we gain from it? Practically speaking. Shabbos Chazon, we're showing the Beis Hamikdash for what? Mashal ma'av sheyesh le ben yoker, v'osle malbish yoker lislabish vay, u'mitzad shlo nizra ben bois beged, v'osa mais masher lo yasum, kara oise lekama kroim, this beged that the father made for him. V'osle pam sheni levush yoker, v'kara oise gamke. Ma'osa av, osle levush shlishi, v'loi nosne lulbish oise, ragonza, he hid it away. ולפרקים ידועים הוא מראה לו על לבוש ואומר לו ראה שאם תסנהג בדרך היושר ינוס לך לבוש זה ללבוש עושה. And by doing so, what do you gain? ומצד זה מרגיל לו ללך בדרך היושר עד שיבודה בו שנעשה אצלו כמו טבע to take care of his clothes, to take care of himself, to be careful. אז יותן לו על לבוש להלבש עושה the father is not worried. It becomes natural to the child to behave and not run around and tear his clothes. There's many sikhs of the Rebbe on this mashal. And in every sikha he'll like explain different things. There's one sikha where the obviously, we're talking about one time a beged, the second time a beged. It's like the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash. Then Shabbos Chazon, we show him the third Beis Hamikdash, but we don't let him have it until we're ready to have the Beis Hamikdash. But there's so many details here in the mashal. So one sikha the Rebbe will talk about why do we liken it to beged? Why doesn't he say something else? Other sikhas he explains about this idea of. I don't remember. But different sikhs explain different aspects of this machzeh, of this mashal. And in our sikha, he's going to focus on one other point. So now the Rebbe is going to ask, what the Rebbe used to call a klotz kasha. A kasha that sticks in the middle of a road like you have a log of wood and you can't go further. The tzarach bir ba'atzamas ha'mashal ha'teichen ha'nimshal. The l'chura bishlema b'mashal harei alavush atzmai einay elas chartz dodi ve'einay goyre mitzad atzmai sheyisnaig haben kedaboy. V'lachein rak ha'idei zeh she'aviv einay noisen loy halavush ורק מר אלוהי, ואומר אלוהי ראה שם תסנאיק בדרך היושר, ינוסנו כל לבוש זה, הרי זה מרגילה לכת בדרך היושר. So showing him the clothes that he's holding for him, that's going to train him. But let's look at what happened by us. We were shown things, and still and all didn't help. Aval benimshal hare etzem metzias hamigdash toil shipur v'atava b'matzav b'nei Yisrael beglal hi yosei makim gilu shchina v'riyas alakos. Buy a child, you give him clothes, and he doesn't feel how valuable it is, so he'll tear it up. And therefore, you show it to him, you don't give it to him. But by the Yidden, when they had the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash was not just a nice piece of clothing. The Beis Hamikdash had things that were supposed to elevate the Yidden. You saw Gilei Elokus in the Beis Hamikdash. It was a whole level of godly revelation. So what's going on? How can this showing the Beis Hamikdash do more than actually experiencing the Gilei Elokus? Lefiza tzarich biur echi tochen sharias alchus bezman abayis kishoye Beis Hamikdash almachayne ben Yisrael al regel v'ro b'may nemes asaris anisim shnas lavasenu Beis Hamikdash u'b'mesh shanim rabbis harei kol ze loy pol alem she'iti was darkum afar pi shebishas ma'isa hayu neviim she'chichos Yisrael v'yizhirum sh'aydei maseyim haroim yigremu legolus v'chorban abayis. So all of that is not enough. Now you come Shabbos Chazon and you show it to them. V'ilu zer ksherak marinas hamikdash delasid merachik. The Rebbe is going to talk about the merachik soon. V'zeh gufa rak leprakim yeduim yesh bekoiche lifal avnei Yisrael lahargilam alechas b'derech hayosher ad sheze yeh k'moiteva b'nafsham. How is that better than everything that took place in the previous Beit Hamikdash? Yes, Loimar Shabir Bezan Nirmas Masha Kosvar Reblevitzkim Barditchev Shemari Lekol Echad VeEchad MiYisrael Hamikdash De La'asid Merachik. So the Rebbe is going to be medayik in this part of the mashal about the two lashonos over here. Marin, instead of that the Yidden see it on their own, and another thing is Merachik. Merachik, the Rebbe is going to say, doesn't really seem to fit into Re'iyah. The lechura tzarich bir harei v'richok heim shnei inyanim shaynim. V'yeseirim ezeh hareiyah meire shadavar hu bekirov. And another thing that, because you can only see things that are close to you. Something that's far you can't see. Something that's from far but you could hear about it. Or you can understand in your mind about it. And another thing, not only is something that's close to you possible to be seen, but also to mekareves or media prate adavar laharoya, because you see it, so this impacts you more. Like we'll soon talk about ein eid nasadayin. It Bashenk, if I hear about it, okay, maybe I didn't get all the information, maybe it's not exact, maybe it's not this, maybe it's not that. So how can you use the term re'iyah and rachik? Okay, do achiluk be'riyah l'shmiyah. The Riyah Mikara V'Shviyah Merachik. Kloimar Riyah Magia B'Nefesh V'Chayderes Ba'Adam B'Vados V'Yisamtus Kazul She'eina B'Shmiyah. The Kesha Adam Roya is a davar Loya Ilu Heichachis V'Rayis Listers Riyase. Why? Because Riyah brings it so close to him, it becomes part of him. Ki me'acher shehu ba'atz me'iros ha'dover, hayre nis'ames v'nisbarer etzle ha'dover, yoyser mekol biru sichli. Uki mudgish ba'halachet, the ein eid na'asadayin. Why? What's wrong? Isn't that the best type of court case? If the dayanim themselves saw what happened? So he says, Kedisa b'gemara hatam, the kivin, the chizyohu, l'chulu loy matzah chazlei schus. Since they saw it, they can't find the schus. It says, V'shaftu ha'eda v'hitzilu ha'eda. The job of the dayanim is like a defense attorney. The job of the dayanim is not to find the person guilty. They need to find a way to be matzel this person from a death penalty. Now, if they saw it, they would never be able to find the schus. If they only hear about it, that's something different. That's what we take on, that if a bezdin hears from two kosher eidim, so then they believe them. This is considered solid evidence. So they could still find a schus for the person. By the way, there's a very geshmak sikha about this based on mourning. The Rebbe explains this is the idea of by Matan Torah there was this nest of Royinus HaNishma v'Shoyminus HaNir. The Eibishter doesn't make any nisim for nothing. What was this idea of Royinus HaNishma v'Shoyminus HaNir? So the Rebbe explains like this. What do we usually hear about? Elikus. Elikus is not something we can see. What do we usually see? Gashmis. By Matan Torah, Nishapchua Yotzres. What's usually heard, Elikus, was so close to us that we actually saw it. And Gashmias all of a sudden became far. It was Shoyminus HaNira. What's usually seen, the Gashmias in front of us, was something in the way of Shmir. So if Re'iyah is about being close, so how do you use the word merachik? V'im kein ma'al sha'omer, marin shemarin l'chol echad v'echad miYisrael hamikdash l'losid merachik, de'im zeh ba'ofen shel Re'iyah, harei ze madgish she'eina merachik el mekarev. V'yesh loymar, the kavanasi b'zel lamdeinu, shnei inyonim hofchim hanitzrachim b'chdei she'alicha b'derech hayashar, Tas teyasa v'tia k'mayteva ba'ofen shetavis nesinas hamikdash l'losid. You need to have re'iyah and you need to have merachik, as the Rebbe is going to explain so. Now the Rebbe, to explain that, is going to bring in a classic thing, which fits in also with the 9 days that we have to learn about in Yonah Beish Hamikdash, about a very famous question about who's going to build the third Beish Hamikdash. Some places it's mashma, it's min hashamayim. And some places it's mashma that it's b'bnei Adam. So how do you resolve the stira? So he says, "Bir inyan yedua das hazoyar shebeis hamikdash hashlishi yibona idei hakadosh baruch hu binyan the kutsha b'richu." U'k'may shekasav Rashi, mikdash ha'asid shon mitzapim bonui u'meshuchlal already l'mayla hu yigala v'yaveh mishamayim shenamar mikdash adnai koinu yedachad. Hashem's hands make it. And the Zohar also says, we'll bring it down soon, that this is the reason that the Beis Hamikdash tradition, Beis Hamikdash Hasheni, they were binyan the barnash, they were built by people. That's why they had no kiyum, because a person doesn't have the power to make something that's going to be kayim lo'ilam void. After the third Beis Hamikdash, which is made by the Eibishter, that's going to be a bias nitzchi. אבל אידך מצינו ברזל שהמקדש ייבנה ידי בני ישראל וכן פסק הרמב"ם the Mashiach בונה המקדש ולכאורה time my pashut why the Beis Hamikdash is not going to come down in Hashemayim, why lahalacha do we have to say that the Yidden are going to build it? Because it's a mitzvah. The Eibishter can't put on tefillin for me. The Eibishter can't put tzitzis for me. The same thing. There's a mitzvah to build a Beis Hamikdash. Shari binyan Beis Hamikdash in mitzvah asay. K'may shekasav asli Mikdash. Mitzvah davar mutla b'nei Yisrael. So coming down in Hashemayim doesn't help. V'hine kvar nizbor kama pamim sheyesh loimer kama tivuchim ben beis adayis the travayu isnu bei. Both the building from the Eibishter and people. The binyan habayis lamata yir b'dei adam. ובמקדש זה שלמטה ירד וישכן המקדש הרוחני דלמיילה. So we're going to build it, and the Eibishter's Beis Hamikdash haruchni is going to be beslabish from the Gashmistic Beis Hamikdash. That's one answer. Oish Hamikdash Gashmi yered min hashamayim aval had losses o yasharim shetavu ba'aretz. It says tubu ba'aretz shareha in Megillas Eicha. So these went into the ground, that we're going to have to replace. Shehein hoye b'dei adam. So now we're going to have to replace. They're going to come back out of the ground. Yalu v'yizgalu v'yamidum b'mkoimam. And there is a halacha about building a home. V'hamayimid hadlosses nechshav ki'ilu banoi. And that becomes a chazakah. If you want to have you want to make a chazakah for a kinyan by building doors into the house, that makes a chazakah. So in other words, even though all we're doing is the doors are going to rise out from the ground, and we're just going to put it in place, it's considered that we built it, even though the Beis Hamikdash itself comes from Hashemayim. There's another beer somewhere else that Rabbi mentions that the Rambam says that we know in general what the Beis Hamikdash, the Lasid is from Nevuos Yecheskel, but we don't really know exactly how. And that's why in Bayis Sheni they made it a little bit like what it says in Nevuos Yecheskel, a little bit like was in the first Beis Hamikdash. So we don't know all the details. So those parts of the Beis Hamikdash that we know how to build, we're going to build. The rest of the Beis Hamikdash that we don't know, that's going to come down in Hashemayim. Al kol pon, v'al pi ze nimtza, shebebinyan de la'asid yesh tzorech b'shnei ha'inyanim. Heina inyan de binyan de kutcha brichu. V'chein she'ya'asa yadei b'nei Adam ha'melech ha'mashiach. Now, the Rebbe is going to explore this. Why? Why do we need to have both? We already explained, Al pi nigla, a Yid has a mitzvah to do it. And we explained up in Pnimis and Yonim, you need to have it a kiyum, and he has to have from the Eibishter. But the Rebbe is going to explain up in Pnimis and Yonim why both of them work together. Because the Beish Shlishi, Ushiyah Beish Nitzchi, the loike Beish Halav, Beish Habeis, V'lachein Tzadich Liyis, Binyana the Kutcha B'richu, V'loi Binyana the Barna, Shein Lekiyum, Kimavur B'zoyer Sham, where it talks about that the building the Beis Hamikdash has to come, Mikdash Adna Kohen Yedecham, Mila. And this is a theme that the Rebbe always speaks about. It's not enough that things could come in Hashemayim. For here he doesn't use the words Dira B'tachtoinim, but in other places the Rebbe always uses it, that to be able to have that something becomes part of the world, which is the whole idea of Dira B'tachtoinim, it has to come mitzad Tachtoinim. The Eibishter can't just drop it on us. It has to come from us. This is also similar to the Maila of Purim over Matan Torah. Kimu Masha Kiblu Kvar. Or Kiblu, that during Matan Torah was Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis, Beruchnis, it came up from above. By Purim, it came from the Yidden themselves. That is the way we need everything to be. Both of them together. It has to have the Maila of coming from above, and that it comes from us as well. אבל אידך נדחה המקדש צריך להיות גם כמוישהו בגדרי המטה ולכן קביעוס נדחה זו למטה היא על ידי מעשה בני אדם שאז הנדחה כמוישהו מצד בניין דקודש בריחו נקבעס גם בגדרי המטה as well. The Rebbe brings in the footnote over there in 41 that we see a similar thing concerning the Kedusha of Yerushalayim and the Kedusha of the Mikdash, that first of all it's holy because that's the place where the Shekhinah rests. On the other hand, it needs people to make it. Shlomo HaMelech has to be Mekadosh the place. Ezra had to be Mekadosh. If you're going to be Moisef al Azara, and if you're going to be Moisef on Yerushalayim, there's a whole thing that you have to bring the Sanhedrin and so on. So it's not just enough that the Kedusha comes Momaila, it has to come from us also. So now we're going to explain this with Marin and Merachik. יש לומר כשם שהוא בנגיע לבניין בייס המקדש על דרך זהו גם בזה שמרן המקדש לא עשה לכל אחד ואחד מישראל שיש בזה מעין שני עניינים אלה בניין לקודש בריחו ומעשה בני אדם ונרמזים בבייס על לשוינס מרן ומרחק כדלקמן מה שכוסף לא שמחזה שמרן לכל אחד ואחד מישראל אין כוונוסי רק שבשבס חזון Yes, because then you wouldn't use the word Mari. You would say Roya. Kol echad ve'echad Roya. What is the emphasis over here? Shemarin oisoi. Hainu sha'ariya ba loy mitzada adam atzmai elihi pu'ulosoi shal zeh shemara oisoi. Sha'ariya ba milmaila. Al derech sha'binyan hu binyana de kutcha brichu. That is the part of the Beis Hamikdash that happens on Shabbos Chazon that comes from above, the Marin. V'zeu achidush b'riyah zu l'gab b'riyah sashchina Hamikdash alfa beis that we asked, how can it be that by showing us the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos Chazon, what does that do for us more than all the years that we saw in the first and second Beis Hamikdash? B'mikdash alfa beis after b'nei Yisrael all the regel v'kriv v'karbanos b'mikdash v'ro gila shchina idei aseres anisim shenas laveseinu shepshita shekolza maybe Yerushalayim. The Rebbe brings an interesting thing. It says that what's the reason for eating meiser sheni in Yerushalayim? There's different types of meisers. It's meiser rishon, you give to the Levi 10%. There's Meiser Ani, you give to the Ani 10%. Meiser Sheni, you're not giving to anybody. All you're doing in Meiser Sheni is you're taking the food up to eat in Yerushalayim. Or if it's too much to take, so you change it for money, and then you buy the food in Yerushalayim to eat in Yerushalayim. What? Why? What's the purpose in it? I can understand you want to support the Levi. I can understand you want to support the Ani. Truma you give to the Kohen. Makes sense. But you're eating it anyway. Why do you have to eat it in Yerushalayim? Eat it at home. So he says that we see the same idea by Meiser Sheni. B'mekolshkim v'kalv'chaymer mezeh sha'aliyah atzma l'Yerushalayim lechel Meiser Sheni mevia l'Yerushalayim. Shahaya Raya Kedusha Gedayla. The Tosha says this. Shahaya Raya Kedusha Gedayla, when a Yid had to go to Yerushalayim to eat Meiser Sheni. V'koyanim oiskim avoida. Haya mechavin liba yoser l'Yerushalayim v'lilmay Torah k'dadashin b'sifri l'man tilmad l'yira v'goymer. Godel Meiser Sheni shemevil de Talmud, says the Sifri. Doesn't say Meiser Rishon brings you to learning. Doesn't say Truma brings you to learning. Meiser Sheni. Again, you're eating your own food in Yerushalayim. Because you see the Kayam, you see the Beis Hamikdash, you see the Avodah. Lefisha Aya Aymid B'Rishalayim Ad Sheyochel Meiser Sheni Shaloi. Vaya Roya Shekulam Oiskim B'Mlech Shamayim Avodah. Hayugam Hu Mechaven L'Yerushalayim V'Oisik B'Torah. So therefore, by eating Meiser Sheni, it brought him to learn Torah. So even when they just came to Yerushalayim to eat Meiser Sheni, they were Nis'ala. How much more so when they had to bring Karbonas, and how much more so when they were Oil Regel, and they saw the Asar Nisim, and so on. So what's missing? It came from them. V'ilu Beis Hamikdash Hagimel Hareza ba'ofen shemarin l'chol echad v'echad Yisrael sha'Hakadosh Baruch Hu mara oisay. The Rebbe is going to explain the difference. V'achiluk bein davar sha'adam roya me'atzmai l'zeh shemarim lo me'mayla. Seemingly in both cases I see. What does it make a difference if I'm shown by the Eibush Torah? I see it myself. Hu hein b'kamas v'hein b'echas. Kasher ha'adam roya me'atzmai eina roya is called prati adavar. Sometimes you see something, you walk into a room, you see something. But then you have the host picks it up and says, you see this esrig? It's a lot different than when you just happen to be in shul. You see him holding the esrig, but then he picks it up and he shows, give a look here. You see it totally different. When you're shown something, bekamus, you see much more. Mashenki kishim marim loy, hariyachol liris is called adav. Another mila in eichus, the difference between marin loy or if he sees it by himself. Kashariyas hadavari b'kayacha adam harei tfisas hadavar hi lefi oifen kela v'chushav ve'enoi toifes hadavar k'maishahu. It's the way I come to the picture. It's the way I'm coming with my baggage and my vision and my capabilities and my sight, how good my eyes are. Ve'ilu kashem marin lois hadavar ein ze lefi medidas tfisa adam alafi erech hadavar shemarin loy. Val derech zel menegel lebot hamikdashes. Beis Hamikdash alpha beis ro bnei Yisrael be'atzma masagilui. V'kiven shehi re'iyah shal nivra ayid, that's a nivra. Harei ein ze gilu elakus da hamikdash k'may shehu. Ki ein b'yichaltoi shal nivra lirois ol ha'asik b'elakus ela ba'oifen mugbal lefi erech medidus v'agbolas ha'adam. And therefore, he says, he brings a footnote 44, that everybody took the gilui of Oile Regel in their own kalim, according to Chol Chad l'fum Shur delay. A person that had greater hasagas nalakus had a greater appreciation of what he saw. Someone with less saw less or appreciated less. Masha'enkin hamikdash d'la'asid shemar l'chol echad v'echad misrael ein za lefi erech v'darges hanivra elazeu hamikdash atzma itself ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu mara oisai v'inyan zeh hu naila shaloi be'erech v'ma shenivra yachal lirois olahasig u'metam zeh Re'iyas hagiluyim shebayis rishon or bayis sheni v'havoida az loy pola shanhagas b'nei Yisrael b'derech hayosher tia k'moy teva b'nafsham inyan hanitzchias, because it was about what they saw and their appreciation. But dafke Beis Hamikdash de la'asid yesh b'koichai lifoil shanagosam tia b'derech hayosher. So now he's going to bring in this idea of merachik. This concept is going to, or in Beis Vav, he's going to bring in the idea of rachik. Kiriyas v'avodas Yisrael b'mikdash rishon v'sheni eina elari yasai v'avodasai shel nivra d'liyasim d'mugbal ba'al shinoi haregam avodasai bagbala v'yefsh sh'yelo nitzchias ma'she'en kiriyas hamikdash d'la'asid harei ze pe'ula mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'lchein dafke b'koicha lifol she'hanhaga b'derech hayasher te'asa k'moy teva. Abnam afar pikein Kiven shekol zeh mitzad hamarin shemol mayla, v'loy mitzad ha'adam shalamata, nimtza shemitzad matzah b'nei Yisrael mitzad atzmai, ein re'iyas hamikdash pa'elos by from nitzchi. What did we say before? You need to have binyan of the Kutcha B'richu, and that we should build it. Because if it's only binyan of the Kutcha B'richu, like the Zohar says, and it doesn't come from us, so then it doesn't really connect with us. That says that there's a baskel b'chol yom comes out and says shuvu banim shevavim, but we don't hear it. What does it help us? But the neshama l'mayla, the shoyrish and neshama above, the mazel neshama hears it. So what does that help us? The neshama above has no problems. How does that help me down here? Like it says about the people that were around the Nile. It's brought down Sechs Megillah that they all of a sudden started trembling when the Nile saw a machzeh. Why? Why did they tremble? They didn't see any machzeh. So it says afar gav the iulay chazi, even though they didn't see mazlayu chazi, the mazel above saw. So we see that even when the shoyrish haneshama above sees, it affects us down here. Why, Take? Because the neshama upstairs saw something. The kivun she bought loy mitzad adam shalamata shu nesayr b'tshuv mitzad atzmai el mitzad zrus d'layla. But then, ainly soyre zukiyu meitel adam, the very famous Maimer, the Alter Rebbe, Adam ki Yakriv, the beginning of Lekutei Torah, almost the beginning of Lekutei Torah, that he speaks about this barichas, that when a person has only a zrus d'layla from above, they don't become changed unless they do something with that zrus d'layla. So that's the problem if the building of the Beis Hamikdash comes only from above, and if Shabbos Chazon would only be from above. V'zeh shemedayik shemarn l'chol echad v'echad miYisrael hamikdash d'la'asid merochik she'af shemarn hamikdash d'la'asid tzarech sheyurgish etzel ha'adam shu merochik v'avodas ha'adam tzarech liyis lizboinem b'zeh gufa that it's far from him. Shemarn l'hamikdash d'la'asid v'hu mitzad atzmai rochik mizeh. I need to bring myself into the picture. The Eibishter is ready. The Eibishter is showing it to me. I need to now bring myself to connect with this, to build it. Just like by the child. You're showing him the beged, but he needs to really want it to such a degree that he's going to change. And everybody in the world always talks about it. It's sad things. You read the Haftarah, it's very sad things. So it's starting off with things that are sad, but we're making it into Chazon, a vision of the Beish Hamikdash. How do both ideas fit together? In Yanim Shem Hepech HaYeshuv HaNechama, that's the beginning of the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazon. Ki Gilui HaMachzed HaMikdash D'La'asid Bo Aideh Regish HaRichuk Hamevur B'Haftarah the Shabbos Chazon. She's a poil Akirov Shemechazon Tia V'Sachazadna Ineinu. It's a lotion that Tzemach Tzedek says. Chazon has to be transformed and made into v'sachazana ineinu b'shem chotzim barachim. Chazon, v'sachazana. The Beis Hamikdash la'asid loitia merachik elam mekarav, that we're actually going to have the Beis Hamikdash down here. Al pi kol nal yesh levayir ha'ili am yuchad Beis Hamikdash. The la'asid b'kviyas Shabbos Chazon shechal b'yom Tisha B'av atzmai. She'oz noisav al zeh shemarim chol echad v'echad Yisrael Hamikdash the la'asid, which is milos hagilush metzad la'mailam. So now we have something extra that we don't have on a regular Shabbos Chazon. On the Shabbos Chazon that comes out on Tisha B'av, we have the Mila that is Yom Leidas Mashiach. Harei Kivin Shaboy B'Yom Neld Mashiach Tzedkenu. V'oimed Muchan Ligal Es Yisrael V'Livnis Hamikdash V'M Kaimer. Harei Ze Moisef B'Nesinas Koyach Da Avoida Sa'adam B'Shayches L'Mikdash L'Lasid. I think there's somewhere here in a footnote where the Rebbe brings down from a Mefaidish that Mashiach is born every year on Tisha B'av, which means it's the concept, it's the gili of Mashiach. I don't remember where I saw it, but somewhere over here, that Mashiach is born maybe it's a different sikha. Mashiach is born every Shabbos, every Tisha B'av. And that gives Hazrei Moisef an Sinas Koyach da Avodas Ha'adam B'Shaychus L'Mikdash L'Lasid Shlo Yeh Ba'ofen Shel Merachik Ela Ba'ofen Shel Karev V'Karev Mamish HaShaych L'Metzias Ha'adam. By days a yored ben is gala Beis Hamikdash lamata begali mamish chalechad ve'echad v'yiratzon sheniske lazem b'Shabbos Chazon the shana zu mamish. This was said on a Shabbos Chazon, Shabbos Parshas Dvarim, Shabbos Chazon. Ubefrat shalosh tevis shal shana when the sikha came out. Heim hoya tehiyah shnas arenu neflois tavshin and aleph shakadosh baruch hu be'atzmai, again arenu like marin. Hashem says, I will show them l'chol echad ve'echad miYisrael neflois. The Geula Mitzvah V'Ashleimet, the K'meitzeischem after Tzrayim Aren, the flies would take from the Yad Mamish. I think it was the Mittler Rebbe, a Maimon of the Mittler Rebbe said it, that he brought over here earlier, that Mashiach is born every Tisha B'av.